Yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Marvelous Chats. My name is Finto. In this video, I'm joined by Hoffman and Zibberwolf, and we're going to be reviewing the entire series of Obi Wan Kenobi, which just finished this week on Disney Plus. And we're going to talk about also what do we think is coming next. Guys, tell me, now that the season's finished, how do you rate it overall? Like, what do you think? Like, what were the highs? What were the lows? Talk to me.
It's tough for me. Like the series overall, I'm gonna give like a 6 out of 10, and that's like a hard thing to say because in my mind, when you're making a show like this and watching it, it's like, was it worth it in the end? And like, I don't know if a series that is a 6 out of 10 overall is worth it to make, and especially to kind of juggle with canon and like really play loose with what they were doing and like stuff that people would love. So like even though it's a 6 out of 10, like I do feel like it was worth it because there are some stuff in there that is like a 10 out of 10. There are moments in there that are some of the best things I've seen in Star Wars that I love. Some like now that those things exist in Star Wars, I am huge about it. But like overall, the series just wasn't that good for me, man. Like it just kind of
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to wholeheartedly agree with that. I give it a 6 out of 10 as well. It's one of those shows that it did have its highs, but it had a ton of lows, and it didn't make up, like, any of the highs didn't make up for the fact that you really didn't do well on the story writing. You didn't think too much on the canon. You really gave no shit about what Star Wars truly is, and you I get it. You're trying to take things in between and write a story, but like if you don't really meticulously work on it, take some time and actually think about what you're doing, then you end up with Obi Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, dude, like, for me, this was like a passion project for me. Like, Obi Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, these are my favorite Star Wars characters of all time. I love Hayden Christensen, love Ewan McGregor. So for me, I went into this show thinking it can't fail. I'm like, even if the episodes are terrible, I'm still gonna love it because this is just the best time in Star Wars. These are my favorite characters. How could it go wrong? And unfortunately, a lot of it did go wrong. Like, it baffles me. It really does baffle me. Like, thinking back at now that the show's finished, how Disney didn't put in twice the amount of budget for the show, twice the amount of writers, or just better writers. How the hell were John and Dave not even involved in the show at all is terrifying to me. Like, it made no sense. And before I say anything bad about Reva as a character, I have nothing against the actress. I think she herself was directed in a certain way. There was a certain story that was put in stone, and she just played her role to as best she could. But the character was terrible. I hated Reva, hated her in the show. I just didn't. I wasn't compelled in her story at all. I thought it was very just blah. It was boring, like, and it was so obvious as well. We were talking about it when we reviewed the first episode, that it was obvious that Reva was in the temple during Order 66. I just think that the whole story was just so predictable with her, that it was so predictable that it's like, I don't even need to see it because I just know that that's what's going to happen. And to touch on the leaks that happened before the show even aired, so leaks went around a few weeks before the show aired, and the ending of the show was apparently revealed. And I would say probably 80% of those leaks actually did end up happening. Now, a report came out maybe after the second or third episode, I can't remember, that they had changed the ending. So the leaked ending was changed slightly. And I think that the reason why they did this is because there was so much backlash against Moses Ingram as a person over this character that they had to change what happened at the very end. So just to tell you guys, because I've been dying to talk about this for weeks and I didn't want to ruin it for anybody who's listening to us or watching us, but basically I could talk about the leaks now, which is great. So to basically say it, what the original plan was that Reva, kind of the story went the way it was going to go anyway, but the last episode they changed it. So Reva did go to Tatooine. She knew who Luke Skywalker was, and she basically went there to kill him, right? The original episode was going to have Obi-Wan versus Reva. They were going to have a fight, and basically Obi-Wan was going to best her. But that's kind of the same thing what happened with Vader. He wouldn't be able to kill her at the end, so he basically lets her go. So people in the community, I was watching this weeks before the show aired, they were up in arms like, how is Reva going to find out who Luke is? How the hell does she have that information? How does she know that he's a Skywalker? And how does Obi-Wan let her go? He has to kill her, right? Has to kill her to protect canon, to protect everything. Like, there can't be a person out there who knows who Skywalker is, you know? So basically she goes back to Vader with her with her tail between her legs that she's failed, and Vader, hearing the news about this, not specifically that he had a child, but hearing that she failed to beat Kenobi, Vader kills her in, like, kind of in anger. Like, he basically strikes her down. So what they did was they changed it to the ending that we got now to turn her back to the light side and potentially keep her going with another story. So my question to you guys is, do you prefer the first, like the original leak, or do you prefer the way that the story actually went?
I would say that I actually prefer the leaked version of this. The idea that Kenobi lets her go is, kind of not great, right? And doesn't feel good because he lets someone go who knows who the boy is. But having her get killed by Vader, and then that information dying with her, makes more sense than Kenobi now having someone out in the world. Like, is she good? Is she bad? We really don't know the status of Reva as a character in terms of her intentions anymore. And she still has that information about Luke. So like, it's kind of a weird deal to me that she is in existence as a character with the knowledge that Vader has a kid named Skywalker on Tatooine. Like, it's a very weird, disrespectful addition to the canon. And I'm sorry to anyone who is, hates that type of Star Wars speak to the community, but like, they are disrespecting George Lucas's story so hard by having that out there. Like, Luke was a secret kept by like 3 people. It's Yoda, it's Kenobi, and Bail Organa, and I guess Uncle Ben, and like that family. Like, that's the circle. That's who knows. And now they're expanding that. That's disrespecting George Lucas's story, man.
Yeah. It completely just smushes everything. Like, it smudges. It's just like I said earlier. Like, like they didn't give a shit about the canon. All they wanted to do was write their own story and make Reva like a hero in disguise, kind of. And it just didn't work out. Like, we didn't believe anything from Reva. We didn't believe, her interrogations. I didn't like the fact that she was talking as if she wasn't an Inquisitor. All the other Inquisitors were talking as if they were proper of the Empire, and so when she's talking kind of normally, it's like, okay, you're clearly someone that's not part of the Inquisitors. You're someone that's hiding, we're going to get a reveal and I'm not going to care because I'm already aware of it.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to know is, like, what happened to Fifth Brother? What happened to like the other Inquisitors?
I was about to bring up the Fifth Brother, because the Fifth Brother actually knew the plan. He was like, you abducted a senator's daughter. What the hell are you doing? And, I think a lot of people were kind of justifying the way the show ended by saying that, oh, well, she's turned good now. Her mission dies with her. But it's like, no, it doesn't actually. The Fifth Brother knew, and he announced it in front of the other Inquisitors. So all they have to do is say this to Vader: look, before she turned on us, she abducted this senator's daughter. And Vader to be like, I wonder why she did that. Let's investigate. So I liked the little actress who played Leia. She was amazing. She was a fantastic little actress. She was so cute. Like, I loved watching it. It was fantastic. But I hate what they did with Leia in the show. It was one of the, apart from Reva, Leia was my biggest problem with the show. There was some fantastic scenes in there. The last speech they have was, where Obi-Wan basically says, look, you got these gifts from your mother and these gifts from your father. Basically saying, look, I knew who they were. I'm not going to tell you who they were, but I knew who they were. That was a beautiful scene. And if episode 4 didn't exist, I'd be so happy with that, because I think it's beautiful, right? Leia has a little sprinkling of who her parents were. These are my best features came from my parents, and so on. It's beautiful. But for me, it destroys episode 4. When we start A New Hope, when we first get introduced to Princess Leia, her first message is, help me, Obi Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. You served with my father during the Clone Wars. I always, that was to be understood. She didn't know who he was. I saw people breaking down the episodes as we were going through week by week, and some people, like, very cleverly taking shots from episode 4 and, like, she basically has, when Luke opens up the cell to rescue her and he says, I'm here with Ben Kenobi. And she's like, Ben Kenobi? Where? And it's like, oh, she knows who Ben Kenobi is. And I was like, okay, that's kind of making sense. That's clever the way they've done this
Mhm.
because she knows his name is Ben. Uh, and then I was kind of thinking, okay, she still doesn't know who Obi Wan is. But then when Reva called him Obi Wan, I was like, okay, they're messing with canon now. This is not making any sense. But then I suppose what I wanted to ask you guys is, are you happy with how they ended it? Because, Ewan McGregor says, you can't tell anybody, this needs to be a secret between us. We don't know each other. We never knew each other. So I suppose they kind of saved themselves in a way. So when she's recording the message, she's still keeping the secret. Help me, Obi Wan Kenobi, pretending like she doesn't know who he is, but she technically does know who he is. For me, the entire movie now is changed. They've
Mhm.
changed A New Hope. I don't think of Princess Leia the same anymore. Is it for the better or is it for the worse? I don't know. I kind of want to see what they do with the continuation of this storyline. And then I think I'll watch Rogue One again and I'll watch A New Hope and I'll kind of see how I feel about the character when it's all said and done. I wouldn't be surprised if we got another Kenobi series or we got a Qui-Gon series. I heard rumors this week that there's going to be a Yoda series coming out. So I'm like, is that going to be when's that going to be in the timeline? You know what I mean? Is it going to be around the same
Mhm.
time as this show or is it going to be, after episode 5 when he meets Luke because there's like a 2-year gap or whatever between 5 and 6? I don't know. But I don't, yeah,
A
I just
Yoda series would have to be in the High Republic. Like that would the High Republic era. That's the only way they could do a Yoda series, man.
I would
Uh
that would be cool. That would be really
yeah.
cool. But I don't know if they have the balls to do that. So I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think? Like, how do you feel about Leia in this show? Like,
I feel like what they did with Leia and like the way they ended it was such a absolute cop out for how they kind of destroyed that canon. And the knowledge about Star Wars and the way the Star Wars story takes place is more than just what's in the movies. Like there are books that were built around this thing that now that Disney says they're all legends, they're not canon. That's true, but there's also like interviews with George Lucas where he talks about his story. And the knowledge of the Star Wars story was also built in with the knowledge of like listening to those interviews about George and how he felt about the story and what was in his head while he was writing it. And there are moments where she's like Ben Kenobi, but it's because the script was bad and like George Lucas didn't fully know his story when he was writing this stuff, but he started to flesh it out as time went on and he established what the story was then, right? So the idea that she is masking that she knows Ben Kenobi um, while she's sending this is just like it works, but like, is it worth it? I don't think it is. I think it makes the story of A New Hope worse. And so you can fit all this stuff into canon and you can bend over backwards to get all this stuff to work. But at the end of the day, some of the changes you make are changes and it's for the worse.
yeah,
Yeah, I really think that it was very sloppy the way they did that. Like there's no way around it. Like the way that they had this story unfold, like the ending wasn't gonna end right. Like it just always was going to ruin a part of the next set of like scenes for the next movie
Mhm.
because clearly like everything that's canon is now broken apart and we're not getting anywhere now. Like and I'm tired of being in the middle, to be honest. Like I'm tired of all this, middle ground area. Like we have Book of Boba Fett, which I mean that didn't do well either. Like we can't like intercools and any sort of like in between shows, they apparently don't work. So we should get out of this.
Mhm.
It it, it was fun. It was absolutely fun seeing the actress for Leia. She did a great job. She was an adorable character and very beloved. But then you get Reva and Reva's act. I'm going back to Reva, but basically with Anakin and Obi-Wan, I think that should have been the crux of the whole show because every time we got a scene with Anakin and Obi-Wan, it was magical.
Yeah.
Anytime we got a scene with Vader and anybody else, and it was magical because we know those characters. We're already familiar with them. And I understand that we want to add more characters like, Reva or, Fifth Brother and whatnot. But if you only have Fifth Brother for like a few shots, you only have Grand Inquisitor for 2 episodes and then a shot in like the fifth episode, then what's the point of having them? You should have just had Reva by herself then, like her handling the situation on her own, trying to prove that she can be a fantastic Inquisitor among the others.
Hmm.
and then trying to prove herself to Vader so that she can get close to Vader. And so we don't have any interjection from Grand Inquisitor, and we don't care about them because we want to focus on the people that the show wants us to focus on.
Yeah.
But there were too many of them.
It's really hysterical that this entire time, a lot of us in the fan base were like saying, "Hey, man, like we wanted like Kenobi and Vader in the show, and the show's kind of like sucks without that. It's kind of mid, and just not. We got no point to it." And all we heard from the rest of the fan base were like, "You just don't like good story. Duh, you guys are idiots. You aren't, you just want stuff fed like spoon fed to you." And then like lo and behold, when we get moments of Vader and Obi-Wan or Anakin and Obi-Wan or just Vader, like those are the best moments in the show.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but the end fight scene with Vader is not amazing because of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. It's amazing because of episode 1 through 3 and episode 4. That's why that scene is amazing. Not because of episode 1 through 4 of Kenobi, but because episode 1 through 4 of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I am sorry, but like, I just don't believe that we needed all this other stuff in the beginning. This is the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. It should have been about Vader and Kenobi. And honestly, a show about Reva called The Inquisitor that would have been a lead up to Kenobi might have been fire if they would have done a show where it's just they established Reva as a character, what happened in Order 66, her coming up in the Inquisitors, and her dealing with the rest of the Inquisitors and Vaders. And then that show led into Kenobi. That might have really, really worked and been amazing because then we know who Reva is coming into Kenobi.
Yeah.
But right now, coming to the Kenobi show, the expectations were Vader and Obi-Wan, Anakin and Obi-Wan, and they weren't matching those expectations, and the show felt boring and bland because of it.
I think if you took all of the scenes out with Reva and all of the Leia stuff out, well, maybe not the Leia stuff, maybe leave some of the Leia stuff in because it would make sense then. But if you just left that stuff out and had all the Vader stuff, all the Obi-Wan stuff, the flashbacks, I think you could have made a fantastic movie out of all that footage. And you wouldn't need to expand on it any further. I love the point you're saying about the Inquisitors. I think I did hear a rumor a long time ago about an Inquisitor show potentially being in development. And to revert back to what Alex was saying, very good points what you said, but it kind of solidifies for me, and with the events of like having Qui-Gon Jinn at the end of the show and stuff, that there is going to be more. Like I think there's going to either be a season 2 or they'll just continue going. It'll be episode 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. But, I'm thinking, like, why did you bring in the dude who plays the fifth brother? He's a big actor. He's in all the Fast movies. And then you've got the dude, Rupert Friend as well, who plays the Grand Inquisitor, also a big actor. I'm like, why are you bringing in big actors for these roles and doing nothing with them? That kind of just gives me the inkling that, like, definitely we're getting more. I really think so. And Ewan has openly said, I'm down to play more. Anakin, like, Hayden Christensen is, like, campaigning for more episodes. Basically, he's telling the fan base, he's telling Disney, like, everybody wants more, give us more. And like, I want more, but I don't want more of this. I don't want more mid storytelling. I think if you do a Vader show, if you do another Kenobi show, you got to do it right. You really do. You got to put the care and effort into it. Like, even like, I don't know what revenue these two shows have pulled for Disney, like, but like, they had to have pulled a good bit of money with shit writing and terrible budgets. It's like, crank up the budget, give us proper Star Wars, some proper stories, well written stuff. Like, try and get George in as a consultant or something if you can. I've heard rumors he could potentially be sticking his nose into Andor a little bit just to put the little George Lucas magic on it, which would be incredible. I would love it, but I don't know, like, it's just with the way it is right now. And I gotta give a shout out to Josh from 10 and Nerds, because he said something that's just proper stuck with me the other day. He's like, how do we live in a world right now where the writing for Boba Fett was better than Kenobi? Like, that's the world we live in right now, and it's shocking to think. It's shocking to think it. Like, Obi-Wan Kenobi should have been their flagship show for Disney Plus. It should have been the show that they put all of the time, all of the effort into, and it should have been the one that should have been an easy win for them. And they messed, and they, for the most part, they messed it up. There was, yes, some incredible scenes. Episodes 5 and 6. If episodes 5 and 6 didn't happen the way they did, the show would be a complete failure. You know, 5 and 6 saved the show for me in a lot of ways. But I gotta ask myself, do the highs delete the lows? And they don't. They really don't. Like, I'm not rewatching this. I might rewatch episodes 5 and 6 because they were special, but
Exactly.
I'm not rewatching the show. I hate how weak they had Obi-Wan for episodes like 1 to 3. It was bullshit in my opinion.
Yep.
Like he's on Tatooine, he's protecting Luke, he's not training, he's abandoned the Force. I'm sorry, what? It makes no sense. You know,
Yeah.
nothing, no sense. All it would take for would be, and they mentioned this in the last episode as well. Owen's like the Sand People, the Tuscans are attacking again. They're telling Luke, so you know that's obviously a threat for them. They like Luke knows who the Tuscans are. He knows there's a protocol in place. You need to hide. If you don't hear from us, you need to escape. You need to run. You know what I mean? So like that's a threat that they have to deal with as a family. You're telling me now that like if a gang of Tuscans were to hit that moisture farm, like Obi Wan Kenobi could do nothing. He wouldn't even be able to defend them. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
that's just it's just wildly ridiculous to me. Like because if you look at any of the canon comics or any of the Legends stuff, which was all approved by George Lucas, by the way. Obi-Wan is in the desert and he's like picking fights with Tuscans to stay in shape. He's using his hands, he's staying fit, he's staying ready, he's training in the Force, he's talking to Qui-Gon. He's still like, I believe he's like, it's implied that he's still communicating with Yoda. You know, this is just the way that it always has been. And I just don't know why they made him so weak at the start of the show. And then like, you know, there's the whole kind of political side to things where it's like, you know, where they're trying to you know, bring female characters to the front ground, and it really felt like that. It really felt like that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to bring Reva to the front of the show and make the show about Reva and Leia, and it was just a mistake. And it's very clear how good the show is for episodes 5 and 6, and those episodes surround Vader and Obi-Wan, which was the show that we all wanted to see. And when we got to see those episodes, everyone was loving life. But the first couple of episodes were terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think that I would have to take a page from Hoffman when he was talking about how you bring a new character into the scene, and I understand that you were feeling Finto that bringing these female characters up front was a bad idea, but it wasn't a bad idea because they're females. It's a bad idea because we don't care about Reva. We don't know anything about Reva, and we don't want to know anything about Reva because we never heard about her. So.
Exactly. Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing to do with her being a woman. It's just the fact that that's what they're trying to do. They're not focusing on storytelling, more so that they just want representation put forward. And if they had made a storyline about her, I wouldn't care about her gender. I wouldn't care about her skin color. I would have an amazing character that I would give a shit about. Like, I love female characters. I love Wonder Woman. I love Black Widow. All these people, and they all have amazing stories. You know what I mean? They're characters that are developed properly. They're not just thrown in for the sake of it. You know. Whereas I just think that that's what was happening there.
Yeah, and so that's why I say like they should have done it the way that Hoffman was saying. Like they could have done an Inquisitor show up Reva and like have her build up as a character.
Yeah.
And then because they should take a page from the Mandalorian. Mandalorian was a brand new character. Am I not? Am I correct?
That's correct.
So, like,
created by Disney. Yeah.
Yeah. So by having a brand new character, they could do whatever they want, and we wouldn't care because it's not going to touch any sort of canon.
Yeah.
And so you see Grogu, you see Mandalorian, and you see all these customs and culture that you see from a Mandalorian, and we've never seen that before on screen, and it was amazing.
Mm-hmm. And you know that would have given the actress more time to dial in Reva, because I feel like Reva started to feel better as a character the longer the show went on. But in the very beginning of the show, you know, she doesn't feel like a great character. She doesn't feel menacing. She doesn't feel like an inquisitor. You know, you were talking, you know, again, the female character thing. Here's a hot take. I fucking love Rey as a character. I don't care what it says. I love Rey as a character. And the female inquisitor that was the other sister in this show felt more menacing and intimidating than Reva.
Yeah.
Like there is something about the way, and Victor brings this up, the character was directed. There's something about the way the actress plays her or the way the director directed this person. It doesn't feel like an inquisitor. It doesn't feel like it's someone who's menacing to the galaxy and is a threat. Every other inquisitor felt way more terrifying than she did. And I don't know what it comes down to because I'm not in that industry, but I do know that the other ones felt better than her. So it feels weird that actress takes the spotlight when the Grand Inquisitor, that actor fucking knocked it out of the park. The fifth brother knocked it out of the park. Like those performances were menacing. And then the one we stay with is Reva. And I'm just like she's the least scary Inquisitor. She doesn't feel like she's actually threatening to anybody. And every scene they create with her feels like a joke. I will never get over her running in the Fortress Inquisitorius, which is still the worst name ever invented in Star Wars. The scene of her like running to catch like the A-wings or whatever that were flying was fucking horrendous. Like I don't know what that run was. I don't know who's directing that, but like it's tearing down this character in your mind of being threatening, intimidating. Like Darth Vader is menacing, not because he's running at everybody, because he's slowly walking at everybody, and he's in control. Like he is a threat, and she just barely felt like a threat ever in the show. Sorry, like I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you see that with Darth Vader versus Reva, because Darth Vader doesn't even move, like he barely turns himself around just to avoid a couple hits from the lightsaber, but then he just like force pushes her. She's like, you can't even touch me.
Yeah,
like it's nuts.
It was the best. God, I love that. I love that Vader just like handling that. It was one of my favorite Vader moments.
My favorite moment was when he threw her lightsaber back to her. Like, here, just a pity throw. Take something. Here, try and defend yourself. You know,
take half of your lightsaber.
Yeah, try and defend yourself. What do you think's coming next? Any predictions or hopes? Hopes more so than predictions.
It definitely feels like another season of Kenobi is going to get greenlit. They really leave it up to it. And I love the look of Kenobi at the end of the show when he's finally got those goggles on. It looks good. He's with Qui-Gon. I would love to see them doing more stuff on Tatooine. And I know we kind of meme on Tatooine because we're there so much. But like this one actually fits it. Like Obi-Wan is the one who's supposed to be on Tatooine doing things. So I definitely think we get that. I definitely think we're getting a Reva show. And I pray we get a Vader show. Because I am someone who's been reading through the Vader comics, and it's good, amazing. It is amazing what they can do with Vader. How much more there is to go, or so much more room for him to go. And it's stuff that wouldn't break canon because Vader is in his own little bubble between the episode 3 and 4. You know, in a way that he just shows up at 4. You have no idea what he's supposed to be doing in between there. So there's a lot of room for him.
Yeah, you got to think like Vader has now been beat and embarrassed by Obi-Wan at the end of this show, which was, again, fantastic storytelling, and just the way that they portrayed his the battle in his head between light and dark. Like it was so well put together. Like the conflict in him is just there. You can see it. Red versus blue, his eyes changing and all. It was beautiful. It was poetry. If you think about it, before we see him next, technically, I know we see him in Rebels, but I mean after that, like in the movies, he shows up at the end of Rogue One and just, we know what happens there, the hallway scene. Yeah. It's stuff of legend at this stage. But we've got 10 years or 9 years before that happens. There's a lot of Vader story. There's a lot of Vader growth. I think he's going to be even more powerful after this. He's going to be more angry after this. He's going to be less Anakin after this. So, I would love to see, I think for me, definitely a Vader show is the top of my list, because I just think it would be amazing to see him just going around and just slaying the rest of the Jedi that are out there. You could have, I've heard rumors of a Cal Kestis show coming out, and like, I love Cal, love that game, absolutely dying for the second game to come out. The second game is going to take place around the same time as the Obi-Wan show, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's some connective tissue there. But a Cal show would be incredible. I feel like that's where it's going, because they've, released his lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge and stuff like that, and they even had the actor in and on the day of release and all. So they're putting a lot of time and effort into what they would usually not do for games. Like, like when Lucasfilm release games, they don't really focus on the characters who were in those games a lot. Like Sam Witwer didn't really get much notice, like, much press or anything for being in the Force Unleashed games, but obviously he went on to become Darth Maul in the cartoons. But people don't really know him for being Starkiller as much. So yeah, I just think they're putting a lot of work into Cal at the moment. I think a Cal show will be coming, and I would love to see that.
Yeah.
No?
No. They just fucked up Kenobi. Just leave our good characters alone, Disney. Like, just let the game developers do the story. I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like when you see Marvel's Spider-Man, like, from Insomniac Games, like they did an amazing job. Like they do so well to make those characters. So like to put them on the big screen after doing a game for them, I would see that as an injustice because the people that write the games and make the games, they're doing what's best for that character. And so you give it to screenwriters, script writers, like it might turn into shit. And we don't want that. We want the character to be beloved and legendary.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but what were you gonna say?
I was just saying fact, yeah.
But in terms of the future, I do see a Kenobi season 2. I really think to get deeper into that, I really think that we should show like training, like slow moments of training, the fights with the Tuskens, like you said, maybe some interjection, maybe a quick conversation with Ben once in a while, like, hey Ben, how you doing? Like kind of like, hey neighbor. Like,
Sure.
And I think after that, I think we're gonna get Mandalorian pretty soon because I feel like we've been itching for something that's not very like deep into the canon. It's just something that's there, and I want to see Mandalorian now. I want to see what happens with Grogu and Mando, and I want to see how they.
A lot of the fan base are calling that like the Filoni verse, and I think that's kind of well on its way. I suppose like I don't think of like I don't really have any thoughts about that because I know that's in great hands, and same with Ahsoka. Like I don't have any worry about any of that stuff, but I really worry about where the likes of Kenobi, Qui-Gon, if they're gonna even Reva, Vader, if they even try to attempt to do more with Leia. I really don't want to see Leia again until Rogue One. But, at this stage, it wouldn't surprise me if they did Kenobi Season 2. And the way that they ended the show, I really feel like Kenobi now, after he kind of says to Owen, yes, look, I think you're right, he needs to just be a boy and the future will happen when it happens. That, to me, kind of, my understanding of that is he's going off potentially anywhere in the galaxy with Qui-Gon, and they're going on missions. They're going on, they've got, as Qui-Gon says, his last line, come on, we've got a lot of work to do, or a long way to go, or something he says. And I'm like, that really kind of solidifies to me that, yeah, I think there could be more off-world missions easily for Obi-Wan off Tatooine, and it's just like, yeah, he'll check in with Ben every now, or with Owen and with Luke every now and again, and then Luke will begin to know him as just the weird dude who lives up in the Dune Sea and stuff like that, so it kind of makes sense, but yeah, do we need it? I don't know.
And you had talked about in a couple of previous podcasts we've done that like Kenobi's gonna be showing up in Andor, so maybe that's just what that means. It's like they're not gonna do a show about him, but like he'll pop up in like Andor shows as somebody who is kind of helping sow the seeds of the rebellion. Like he's not just gonna hide away in Tatooine; he's gonna help start it. The only thing I hate about what he was saying to Owen at the end, where it's like, "You're right. You don't need me. You guys can protect him on your own." And I'm just like, "Are you sure about that, Obi-Wan?" Because they just like got their asses handed to him by Reva, who is like the weakest Inquisitor and like completely failed at Vader. And like Reva's injured and they couldn't even stop her.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of weird. But I definitely could see them doing more with Leia, a young adolescent Leia show, where maybe she's 5 years older than this show, and they can cast somebody. Like I think there's a rumor of them talking to Millie Bob, the Stranger Thing girls. I don't know how to say her name.
Millie Bobby
There's
Brown.
a rumor. Yeah, so like I could totally see them casting her as like a teenage Leia, a young adult Leia in her like 16 to 19 type of age, and her being part, like having her own stories, which we don't really know much about Leia. We just know like she could also like be popping up in the Andor show because she's kind of part of the rebellion.
I would
before A New Hope. So
I could see her being there and that making sense.
Yeah. So,
and she would technically be about 14 or so at the time, because I think Andor is going to take place 3 years before the OT. So like we're technically jumping, I think, if my math is correct, we're jumping like 7 years from the events of the show that we've just watched to Andor, I think, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's funny because there's just so much room for them to do stuff in the canon. With like characters we know, but we really don't know what they've been doing. Like that's why Solo is great. It's because like we don't know what Solo is doing all the time, but like they could really create a lot of story with him. It's just for the Obi-Wan show, they like they chose the two characters who are in a time period that are like seminal, and they're like pillars of Star Wars canon. And that's why it feels so bad for them to be messing around with stories of established characters when there are characters like Leia that they could create stories and it not affect anything.
Yeah, how would you feel How would you feel if they did like a political drama and called it like Alderaan or something? You know, they show like Bale and the
I'm
things that he
in.
has to deal with.
The Senate.
Yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
I'm totally in. I want them to start using, if they're going to do something like that, I want them to start using the TV format correctly. I think part of the reason Disney Plus shows kind of blow right now is because they're trying to make these mini movies where they really need to like make TV shows.
Yeah.
They need to have, The Boys. It's 8 episodes, all of them are like an hour long, right? Like the Umbrella Academy, it's 9 episodes, all of them are an hour long. Like there are way the format of TV lets you get into characters and have character study and do really great things, but you got to have long episodes that are dealing with the characters, and you got to have good writers who are good enough to write intriguing dialogue that make you sit there and watch. Because I remember, one of my biggest gripes about Loki was like, I can't believe we're just sitting here watching the people talk so much. Like it's all they're doing is talking. But then I'm watching The Boys and I'm like, man, these characters are compelling as fuck.
Yeah.
I could sit and watch these two characters talk in a car driving around all day. I love it.
Yeah.
And so like Disney needs to find better writers. Disney Plus has a writers problem that is massive.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You've hit the nail on the head with that one. This video is going on quite long, so I'm gonna abruptly end it, but I would love to continue the conversation in the comment section below. So please leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the series. Are we talking shit? Are we talking facts? I'm ready to have some arguments with people if needs be. So
polite conversations.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, polite conversations. So guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you drop a subscription, hit a like on the video as well. It helps us with the old YouTube algorithm. And we'll see you in the next one.
Later,
Bye.